Good morning. This is a part of the assumption of the SO theory, which helping you on simulating the theory, and after that you can make it more easier. However, the assumptions doesn't mean that if you without the assumptions, the theory or the model of H is unapplicable. However, it's easy for you to understand the SO theory in order to apply the theory in the realistics. We can relaxing some assumptions and change the conditions in the next chapter. There are about 11 assumptions. Right, you hear there we got about this is two nation, two goods, two factor in the international trade. The second assumption is technology is the same in both nations, which means amount K and L is the same price. The commodity of X is labor intensive, commodity of Y is capital intensive in both nations. Constant return to scale for X and Y both nations. Incomplete specializations production in both nations. So we got a not small nation. Or the sixth one is tests are the same in both nations, which means that price are equal and demand is on the same. The seventh, both commodity and the factor are chased in perfect competitive market. The perfect factor mobility within each nation. And the ninth is no transportation cost, no tariff or other barrier for the chase. The 10th is that all resources are fully employed, which resources are we referring capital and labor are fully employed in both nations. The 11th is international trade between nations is balanced. So we move to the first factor. Two nations, two goods, two factor production. As the factor production, capital refers to the purchasing of goods made with the money and productions. For example, a tractor purchased for the farming is capital, along with the same line and desk and chair used at the office, also capital. The second is that labor referring to the expense of an individual bringing a product or service to the market. Again, it can be varied from individual are compensated for their time and effort. The amount they are paid depend on skill they are bring to the table. The second assumption is that the technology is the same in both nations, which means that technology or innovation are transferable thanks to the internet. The information is mostly freely transferable across border, so that they may assume that technology is transferable, which means that amount of the capital or labor are in the same price. The third factor is that commodity assumption is that commodity is a labor intensive commodity Y is capital intensive in both nations, which means that in some countries they got a more capital intensive than another, and some countries they got a more labor intensive than another, which means that that's why they create the trading. This theory based on the idea that the countries in the world will be divided into two type countries, which are developed countries and developing countries. The countries which are developed is the country which are more independent and more wealthy. The country which facing the beginning state of industrialization are called the developing countries. The fourth assumption is that constant return to the scale for X and Y in the both nations, which means that you are familiar with the model in the microeconomy and macroeconomy, which just in order to simplify the model, of course, The fifth is that incomplete specialization in production in both nations, which means that there are no small nations in that kind of international trade which we refer in the previous chapter, which means that even with a free trade, both nations are continue to produce both commodities. This implies that neither of the two countries are very small, so they say that in the free. Okay, we move to the next assumption is that the sixth one is that there's both nations are the same, which means that the price and everything else of the two commodity are the same. We can very surprisingly that because of the different culture, different climates, different everything, that normally what you think is that the taste of individual or customer of the both nations is not actually the same, but you can look carefully that there's some taste or some demand a global, which for example iPhone. Every people in the world love iPhone, or people need Facebook, internet. So in some kind of globalization, that the taste of the both countries in international chess is just the same. Then we can move to the next assumption is that both commodity and factor are tended to be perfectly competitive market, which got a free trade. We have no monopolize, no moral hazards on working on the market. Or they can say it means that the producer, consumer, and trader of the commodity X and commodity Y in the both nations is too small to affect the price of the commodity. The same is true for each user and supplier of the labor and capital, labor time and capital. Perfect competition also means that the long run commodity price equal to the cost of the production, leaving no profit after all of the costs, including implicit costs, are taken to the account. Finally, the perfect competition means that all producer, consumer, and the owner of the factor of production they have perfect and equal, I say equal no less, of the commodity price and the factor of earning in the own part of the nation and in own. Moreover, to make the model more simple, they can assume that there are zero international factor of mobility of the trading good commodity X and commodity Y, which also means that international difference in factor earning would be persist indefinitely in the absence of international trade, which means that there are no capital transferring and labor immigrating between countries. However, in order to make also in order to make the actual model more simple, they can assume that there are no transportation costs for only the commodity in X and Y, which both countries are still producing. Okay, which means that specialization of the production process until relative or absolute commodity price are the same in the both nations, no transportation cost. And also they can assume that all resources are fully employed in the both nations, which the result we are simplify the labor and the capital, which also means that all nations, both nation X and Y, or both nations which are developed and developing countries, are using all their resources, using all their labor and capital to make their productions. And finally, they can assume that international trade in nation is balanced, which means that country X employ, for example, 1 billion export 1 billion USD to country Y, and after that country Y will import also export 100 billion USD to country X. So the trading is balanced, which actually that turned to be impossible in reality. However, that they believe that in the long term it can be possible, but I think that's because they do not count the national debt or government consumption.